Welcome again to my show, Searching for Integrity. My name really is John Smith, and I'm searching for people with integrity. Why? Because our country suffers from IDD, Integrity Deficit Disorder. We have today Frank help me here, Frank. Your last name?
DiMaio.
DiMaio. Okay, great. DiMaio. And his book. And tell my audience what the name of your book is in. Would we?
The title of the book
Yes.
is A Promise Made, a Promise Kept, a husband's journey through journaling to heal the loss of his spouse.
Well, that's
Just,
I've read I've read it quite a bit, and then I'm hearing you read it to me, and it gets your attention. I guess somebody says it gets your attention. You have done a lot since your wife's passing, and part of that was a lot of boat trips. Is that right?
yes. I started the journey. I found the boat actually in our home state of Rhode Island. I had looked all over the country and as far away as Mexico initially.
Right.
And was at home with family for Thanksgiving, and I just happened to pop on my brother's computer and found the perfect vessel. In fact, the type of sailboat my wife and I lusted after. So it's called a canoe stern sailboat. In other words, the bow looks just like the stern. They're both pointed. And in a following sea, the waves on a regular sailboat have a tendency to whack the stern and lift it up out of the air. Whereas when the stern is pointed, a wave can come upon you, but the boat allows the wave to split. So you still may get a little bit of a lift, but you won't get that slamming action, especially in a 7 to 10 foot sea where there's quite a bit of force behind the water. But I couldn't let it go by. My wife and I love lighthouses, and we would travel up and down the East Coast and visit them. And we were married in St. Augustine, Florida, and the lighthouse in St. Augustine is just a perfect little spot. And the boat's name happened to be Anastasia. And that's where the lighthouse is, in St. Augustine. So on Anastasia Island. So I said, I can't let this opportunity go by. This was kismet.
Yeah.
So this boat and I were meant to be together. And I lived on it for 6 years, traveled up and down the East Coast, and of course to Bermuda and back. And it was a wonderful vessel. But coming from Rhode Island, sailing down to Virginia, I had what I called in the book fits and starts. Situations where something would happen and I'd have to go back and then leave, get a little further, and then turn around and have to go back. It was of course my brother and my mom and dad, say, Frank, maybe somebody's trying to tell you something. And I said, no, it's just that I'm going through a learning curve here, Dad. And I have to get to know the boat has to get to know me. And we'll be fine. Well, finally I made it to Virginia, and in 2006 I made my first attempt to cross from Virginia to Bermuda. And like I was telling Mac, I got hit by a gale force storm that formulated within, I'd say, less than 2 hours, slamming down the eastern seaboard of Virginia.
Right.
I was 26, 27 miles off the coast, and the marine radio, you have it set on 16, but once you get to that particular point, the arc of the earth, you lose audio in terms of connection for marine forecast, and now you have to rely on single sideband radio after you get that point. So I could hear from the Coast Guard saying, warning, seek shelter, do not leave port. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm 27 miles off the coast. Are you kidding me? And John, I'm sitting there, boat sailing along. The sky is clear. There are stars, and I'm just enjoying the ride. And I just happened to turn around, and sometimes you have moments when you go, holy crap. And that's exactly what it was like, because behind me, stars on one side, and then clear blackness.
Really?
All the way to the coast.
Okay.
With heat lightning, you can see in the sky. And the winds went from 20 knots, which is about 26 miles an hour. My math is correct. To gale force winds in an instant, like within 3 minutes. I didn't have time.
Wow.
I literally got slam dunked. Thank goodness my mainsail was reefed, which is shortened, but my roller furling was out, and it got ripped. My main got destroyed, lines got broken, parts on the boat broke, the control mechanism for the boom of the mainsail that exploded from the force of the wind, and all this happened within minutes and lasted, well, through the night. I mean, it took me all night to get back to Virginia under motor. But yeah, I had no idea how much damage there was until that morning when I happened to crawl out and look, and the lines were all over the boat like spaghetti. I was amazed how I was able to move about and not
Right.
not be killed.
Right.
But,
Well, with all that noise and all that storm, I think I'd do a lot of praying.
I did, but John, there was a moment of fear,
Mhm.
and then there was a moment of emotional calm,
Mhm.
as if someone had put their hand on my shoulder and said everything was going to be okay, just move about and get things done. At that particular point, I was calm. I did the things that I needed to do. I was blessed and guided by God to get everything done and to be safe and avoid being killed, because essentially that's what I felt like was the Coast Guard would find me hanging off the side of the boat. But I wrote about that. I mentioned it in the book, and it's amazing how when things are falling apart all around you, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, it's like the storm abates, and there's a calmness, there's a sense of peace.
Right.
And you just do what you need to do, because that's what needs to be done, and you don't worry about it. And that was reaffirming of my spirit and faith in God at that point.
Right. Nothing like a repeat.
No. Yeah. But,
You've got some books before this one. Your second book was Promise Made, a Promise Kept.
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
The first one I wrote was actually called The Best Ships, which is part of the end of A Promise Made, a Promise Kept, because my first writing, which was done between 5 and 07, was extremely morose because it was based on all of my journaling that I had done at that particular point in time. And to be honest, John, that was my emotional vomitorium, getting things out of me and onto paper. And I happened to put it in a book form. But at the end, I put the story about how I got to Bermuda and the things that impacted me in relationship to that. There was a person that I hadn't seen for 43 years and happened to find me on LinkedIn. And she was also an author and prodded me for 4 or 5 weeks for me to give her my manuscript. I finally gave in, sent it to her, and she sent me an email about 4 days later. She says, "You made me sick for 3 days."
Mercy.
Yeah, that's what I said. It was, she said, "You exposed everything about what you were traumatized by."
Right.
And reading your journal in a book form was traumatic. Says you can't put that out in print. I laughed. I said, "It's not going out in print. I buried it in deep storage, never to be seen again." And she said, "But the tail end, the story about your sail to Bermuda, that's noteworthy, that's uplifting, and you should write about that." And so she became my editor, and by the end of that year, I had published The Best Ships. But I felt there was something missing. When you put something together and yet inside you feel as though something's incomplete. That's the way I felt, because I felt that the backstory of Judith's and my life together was extremely important in providing the foothold for the reason for the sale. So I shelved The Best Ships and went back to the drawing board and rewrote A Promise Made, a Promise Kept, and provided the reader with the reason and purpose for the sale in relationship to how my wife and I lived our lives together.
Mhm.
So you'll find that when you speak of integrity, that the publication of A Promise Made, a Promise Kept was answering and giving and showing my integrity to the reader, because it's the faith in our relationship that Judith and I had, because we nourished each other's ideas and dreams, and that expresses it.
How old were you then?
When I made the sale to Bermuda,
Well, I guess when Judith passed.
2004, so I was 54.
Okay.
54, 44.
Yeah.
I was born in 49, so.
Was she approximately your age as well?
No, she was a couple of years older than I was. She passed away on the 19th of July, and 2 days before her 58th birthday. And but I was her second marriage, and she was my second marriage. So we have children
Right.
from our independent lives, and I have 4 children, all adults, and now 3 grandchildren. Which, and John, here's the 3 grandchildren within 2 years.
Oh, whoa.
It was like all of a sudden the popcorn machine went off. It's like, holy crap. Hey guys, slow down.
Yeah, they want to move it fast.
Yeah, they jumped right in.
I'm looking here at the what you call the pearls, an adventure story.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
mhm.
That of course is fiction. And it's based on 2 Portuguese sailors who meet in Macau, China, in the period of time between 1852 and 1862, when the Opium Wars were in their height.
Right.
And it initially had started out as a diversion for me when I was writing the initial story about Judith and myself, because the forest for the trees thing, you get so close to what you're working on, you tend to be, I don't want to say
And
focused. Yeah, you kind of lose yourself. And so
right.
I started to do other projects, and that was a fiction project that I started, and was supposed to be a short story.
Mhm.
And it went from a short story to, at this particular point in time, to be 365 pages long. So I'm going to split it up and create two books out of it. But what's interesting is that the main character, one of the main protagonists, Giacomo, gets shipwrecked on the south coast of China, and ends up being saved by villagers who live on the coast and are fishermen. So they're people of the sea. And the woman who finds him on the beach cares for him, brings him essentially back to life, because they should have buried him along with those other members of the shipwreck. But over a course of time, they essentially fall in love and they marry, and they were together for 3 years. And she becomes ill with dysentery and passes away. So there's some correlations there in terms of my life and the characters. And the depression that he goes through was very similar to mine, except I didn't use drugs, where he used opium as a means of numbing himself.
Right.
And then meets this other sailor who happens to be Portuguese as well. And that portion of the story of the adventures that they go through working for a Chinese pirate. And then it leaves China, and the second part of the book ends up in Portsmouth, England, which was very close. I mean, talking the area of Southampton, which in high school I was lucky enough to do what they call it a foreign study program, and went to the University of Southampton for 12 weeks in the summertime. So again, there's some correlation there in terms of landmass and things that I had an opportunity to experience over there, and introduced it into the story. And that part, I have a lot of characters. There is murder and mayhem and theft and death at sea and all kinds of amazing things that go on. I'm really happy with it. It's going to become 3 books essentially. Now the
Good.
pearls will be 2, a prelude to a friendship, which I don't have a cover really yet for, but I have one on the internet. Then the pearls, and then the third is going to be a transition of family from the characters of the pearls coming to the States during the transition after the Civil War up into World War One. So that's the trilogy, and it covers a good period of time, and I'm looking forward to that. I've already essentially done a good portion of that story. I just need, to do some rewrites and put things here and move things there, typical authorship kinds of frustrations. But it's fun. I'm loving every moment of my writing. It's an extension of my art. I essentially sculpt and do things with my hands, but I'm finding that with the autoimmune situations cropping up, the ability for me to hold power tools becomes tenuous after a certain period of time. So I moved from that and went to writing, and I'm glad I did.
When you first began journaling, where you felt like I'm going to do this, or I can't do this?
I can't do this. I felt like I can't do this. Okay, so it's about, I would say, 3 weeks after Judith had been diagnosed, and her and I started to do journaling, and she used to teach legal writing and research, and she just jumped right in. Me, like I said in the book, I'd have the pen in my hands and I'd be tapping the table, twirling the pen, looking around the room, frustrated because it's something that I hadn't done before, and especially to try to put emotion to paper took me a while to get comfortable with. So yeah, it was once I did, though, it just flowed. It came out of me like the spigot on the side of the house being left open.
Some of the I guess links here. One is medium.com and another medium.com. Now, are we talking about mediums, people that are mediums?
No, those happen to be podcast interviews that I'd done and I provided links to.
Oh, I see. It's an interesting way that works whenever you find a good medium. And go ahead.
Judith had taken me to a medium, I guess. And in any case, she had some interest in that. And me personally, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. but I have to tell you this individual knew me from Adam. Nothing, no backstory, no like asking me a particular question to lead to something else. Didn't say a word to me, didn't ask me a thing. Sat there, and all of a sudden, out of this individual's mouth comes information and names, and I'm looking at the individual as John. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Who are you? So I have an appreciation and a respect for those in the field who are have integrity, and present themselves in a manner that is not only professional but profound. And I
It's
looked
really
at
something.
Judith.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. And yeah, told me exactly what I was going to be doing,
There you go.
and I'm doing it. And what, and this is, all right, this is what, 2023.
Yeah.
This is 1988.
Yeah.
And I'm going, yeah, crazy. And here I am.
Somewhat the same for me. I did see something else in here that you got a degree in psychology.
Well, that's a Bachelor of Arts degree. It's undergraduate degree. My
Uh-huh.
graduate degree is in chiropractic. I studied a diplomate program in neurology as a postgraduate. And then later on, I have a master's degree in international relations with a concentration in public administration and what you would probably classify as country reconstruction.
Huh?
So, say like Afghanistan or Iran or some situation where
Right.
democracy is being presented, but the country has no concept to the format.
Mhm.
I would go in with others as a team and work on educating the process
Mhm.
so that those in the country of issue would be able to blend it with their
Mhm.
backgrounds, their
Mhm.
faith, their understanding with respect. Okay.
Just the part about where the books are
Yep.
and how to find them.
Okay. Promise Made, Promise Kept can be found on Amazon,
Mhm.
and you can go to a bookstore or major seller like Barnes and Nobles or any of the other outlets and ask for it. It's not typically something you'd find on a shelf.
Right.
Because that requires a different hardcover type of environment, and it's too costly for me.
That's
Not in my budget.
I understand that, every bit of that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you wanted to be on the New York Times bestseller list, if you have $250,000 in your wallet and you just want to drop it on down there, you
Yeah,
can get on the list.
that's right. That's how it works, just
Yeah.
money works. Um, that's just how it is. I was thinking in terms of doing a sequel, but that's still coming. And I can't get motivated. I get scattered. Do you feel like you're going to have a sequel or something in the future?
Yes, actually, I have in the works two books that'll probably be one book.
Hmm?
From my research from 2013 up until the present, actually, on the power of words and the impact negative words have on your health
Right.
and well-being.
Right.
So that's the psychology of healing that's on the website. Whether that title stays or not, I'm not sure. But I think probably getting to the balance or something to do with that environment will be the title of the book. But I find it's extremely important, and it was helpful for me in the process of putting A Promise Made, A Promise Kept together.
Yeah, that was good time spent, I would think.
Yes, I've read a lot of ethics. And I was telling Mac, I'm reading Charles Fillmore, Prosperity at present, which I
Mhm.
found to be an interesting read.
Mhm. Let me thank you for being here, my guest today.
Thank
Um,
you, John. I'm
I
grateful for
learned
the opportunity.
a lot about you, and I think that a lot of people are going to learn a lot about you when they buy your book. It's something that once you start, then you can't stop. That's
Thank
my
you.
opinion. I let's see, and I want to thank my listeners for searching for integrity, and it's time for me to say so long and happy trails to all. And when we meet again, thanks a lot, Frank. Good to
Thank you,
meet you.
John. Blessings and health to you and your listeners.